August 23, 1944. Camp Alva, Oklahoma. In a wooden barracks where homesick German prisoners count the days until an uncertain future, Gefreiter Klaus Zimmerman sits on his narrow bunk, carefully folding a piece of paper around something precious. Hidden beneath his thin mattress, wrapped in an oilcloth pouch, are 3 small photographs that could cost him weeks in solitary confinement if discovered. But tonight, like every night for the past month, he risks everything to look at them one more time. Dear Brother Hans, we are forbidden to keep photographs of women. The camp rules are clear: no personal images, no sentimental materials, nothing that might compromise military discipline or prisoner morale. But we hide them anyway, because without these faces smiling at us from another world, we would surely lose what remains of our sanity. Last week, Maria, the Red Cross nurse who brings books to our library, slipped me a photograph of her sister standing beside a blue Chevrolet in a yellow summer dress. Hans, I have stared at that image until I've memorized every fold of fabric, every curl of her hair, every shadow cast by the Oklahoma sun. The letter was written by a 24-year-old artillery soldier captured during the Normandy campaign and transported to one of the dozens of prisoner camps scattered across rural America. His words reveal one of the war's most tender and unexpected stories: how American women, moved by compassion for lonely young men far from home, secretly shared pieces of their lives through forbidden photographs that became lifelines of hope and humanity. This letter, discovered in 1992 in the Zimmerman family archives in Saxony, exposes a clandestine network of kindness that operated beneath the surface of official military protocol. It reveals how simple acts of feminine generosity could penetrate the walls of captivity and transform enemy soldiers into human beings capable of remembering beauty, tenderness, and the possibility of love in a world defined by violence and hatred. Don't let history be forgotten. Subscribe so these hidden voices survive. Klaus Zimmerman's letter begins with descriptions that capture both the strict regulation of prisoner life and the irrepressible human need for connection that no amount of military discipline could eliminate. His observations reveal how completely the camp administration controlled every aspect of daily existence while inadvertently creating conditions where small acts of rebellion became profound expressions of humanity. Every morning at 6 sharp, Sergeant Patterson conducts barracks inspection, Klaus writes. He checks our bunks, our lockers, our personal effects with mechanical precision. Any contraband material, letters with censored sections, drawings of home, photographs of family, is confiscated immediately. The punishment for possessing forbidden items is 7 days in solitary confinement on bread and water. But Hans, you cannot imagine the lengths we go to hide these precious images of American women who have decided, for reasons we cannot fathom, to share their beauty with enemy prisoners. Klaus's description of inspection procedures reveals the systematic nature of prison regulation while highlighting the courage required to maintain contraband materials. The severe punishment for possession made each hidden photograph a daily gamble with significant consequences. Yet prisoners continued to risk discovery rather than surrender these connections to the outside world. Camp Alva housed approximately 3,200 German prisoners in facilities designed to maintain security while providing basic humanitarian standards required by international law. The prohibition against personal photographs was intended to prevent prisoners from maintaining emotional connections that might interfere with camp discipline or facilitate escape planning. Klaus's letter documents the various ways that American women found opportunities to provide photographs to German prisoners despite official restrictions. His accounts reveal an informal network of nurses, volunteers, clerical workers, and local civilians who sympathized with young men separated from loved ones and deprived of feminine companionship. The photographs come to us through many channels, he writes. Sometimes Maria slips them between book pages when she restocks our library. Sometimes they're tucked inside packages from charitable organizations that send us soap and cigarettes. Yesterday, Anna, the girl who helps serve meals in the mess hall, dropped one beside my tray while ladling soup. It showed her cousin from Kansas standing in a wheat field wearing a blue gingham dress, her arms spread wide as if embracing the entire sky. Klaus's documentation of distribution methods reveals both the systematic nature of this underground kindness and the risks taken by American women who could face disciplinary action for providing unauthorized materials to enemy prisoners. Their willingness to violate regulations for humanitarian purposes demonstrated compassion that transcended national and military boundaries. The letter provides detailed descriptions of specific photographs that reveals both Klaus's careful observation and his growing emotional attachment to images that represented everything his military service had denied him: peace, beauty, civilian life, and the possibility of love without violence. The photograph from Kansas shows a girl who cannot be more than 20. Klaus writes with obvious tenderness. She wears a dress that moves in the wind like water, and her smile suggests she has never seen a battlefield, never heard artillery fire, never watched friends die in foreign mud. When I look at her, I remember that somewhere in this world, people still dance at harvest festivals, still fall in love under autumn stars, still believe in tomorrow. Hans, I have named her Dorothy in my mind, though I will never know her real name or speak a word to her. Klaus's romantic idealization of photographed women reveals the psychological function these images served for prisoners deprived of normal social contact with the opposite sex. The photographs became not just visual stimulation but symbols of civilian life and peacetime possibilities that military captivity had made seem impossible. The letter documents the social dynamics that developed among prisoners who shared and discussed their hidden photograph collections. Klaus's descriptions reveal how these clandestine materials became focal points for community bonding and emotional expression that official camp activities could not provide. "We have developed elaborate protocols for sharing our treasures," he writes. "After lights out, we gather around Schmidt's bunk. He has the best hiding place beneath a loose floorboard, and examine each photograph by moonlight filtering through barracks windows. Weber insists that the blonde in the red dress is looking directly at him, while Meller argues she's clearly smiling at someone beyond the camera frame. These debates continue for hours, but they're never angry. We understand that each man needs to believe in his own connection to these distant angels." Klaus's account of group viewing sessions reveals how prisoners created rituals around photograph sharing that fostered community solidarity while allowing individual emotional needs. The development of viewing protocols and discussion rules demonstrated sophisticated social organization that emerged spontaneously to manage scarce emotional resources. The letter reveals the specific characteristics that made certain photographs particularly valuable to prisoner collections. Klaus's analysis shows how prisoners developed aesthetic and emotional criteria for evaluating images that reflected their deepest psychological needs and cultural values. "Not all photographs affect us equally," he observes. "Pictures of women in formal poses or studio settings feel artificial and distant. But photographs that capture spontaneous moments, a girl laughing while feeding chickens, a young woman reading under a tree, sisters dancing at a picnic, these images pulse with life and possibility. We prefer photographs where women appear unaware of the camera, lost in their own happiness. Such images remind us that joy exists independent of our observation or participation." Klaus's sophisticated analysis of photographic appeal reveals both artistic sensitivity and psychological insight about what types of images could provide emotional sustenance to men isolated from normal human relationships. His preference for candid over posed photographs demonstrated understanding that authenticity carried more emotional power than artificial beauty. Support this work so the truth continues to reach people. The letter documents specific incidents when prisoners nearly lost their photograph collections during surprise inspections or security sweeps. Klaus's accounts of these close calls reveal both the constant danger of discovery and the increasingly elaborate concealment methods that prisoners developed. "Last Tuesday, Lieutenant Morrison conducted an unscheduled inspection while we were at work detail," Klaus writes with obvious tension still evident in his handwriting. Schmidt had left his photograph collection in its usual hiding place, but somehow Morrison's flashlight beam found the loose floorboard. We watched from the window as he pried up the board and discovered our entire treasury. 17 photographs of American women, carefully wrapped in oilcloth and arranged like pressed flowers in a book. Schmidt received 2 weeks in solitary, but before Morrison could examine the images closely, Weber created a distraction by accidentally knocking over a footlocker. In the confusion, I managed to slip 3 photographs under my shirt. The collection was destroyed, but we saved something. Klaus's account of the inspection incident reveals both the devastating impact of discovery and the prisoner solidarity that developed around protecting shared contraband. The willingness of prisoners to risk additional punishment to save even a few photographs demonstrated the emotional value these images had acquired within camp culture. The letter reveals how prisoners developed increasingly sophisticated hiding techniques as camp security became more thorough and inspection procedures more comprehensive. Klaus describes evolution in concealment methods that showed remarkable ingenuity and determination. "We have learned to think like smugglers," he writes. Schmidt now creates false bottoms in his boots by removing the inner sole and creating a hollow space just large enough for a folded photograph. Weber has discovered that certain photographs can be hidden inside the binding of authorized books if you carefully separate the pages from the spine. I keep my most precious image, the girl in the yellow dress beside the blue Chevrolet, sewn into the lining of my jacket where no routine inspection would discover it. Klaus's documentation of concealment techniques reveals both the prisoner ingenuity and the profound value these images held for men willing to invest considerable time and risk in their preservation. The evolution from simple hiding places to sophisticated concealment systems demonstrated how important maintaining these connections had become to prisoner morale and psychological survival. The letter documents the emotional impact of losing photographs through confiscation, damage, or trading. Klaus's descriptions of these losses reveal the profound grief that prisoners experienced when deprived of their visual connections to American femininity and civilian life. When Hoffman lost his photograph of the nurse from Nebraska, water damage from a leaking roof destroyed the image completely. He didn't speak for 3 days, Klaus writes. We all understood his grief because we've each experienced similar losses. These photographs become parts of ourselves, windows into possibilities for happiness that military life has taught us to forget. When they're destroyed, something inside us dies too. But somehow, new photographs always appear to replace the lost ones, as if the American women understand our need and conspire to keep our spirits alive. Klaus's observation about the replacement of lost photographs reveals the apparently endless supply of images that American women provided despite official restrictions. This continuous flow of contraband materials suggested either organized resistance to camp regulations or spontaneous individual acts of kindness that collectively created a support network for enemy prisoners. The letter reveals Klaus's growing awareness that the photographs represented more than just aesthetic pleasure or sexual frustration relief. His analysis shows sophisticated understanding of how these images functioned as symbols of values and possibilities that military culture had systematically eliminated. These photographs remind us that beauty exists without purpose beyond itself, he writes. In military life, everything serves functional objectives: weapons for killing, uniforms for identification, orders for accomplishing missions. But a girl in a yellow dress serves no military function. Her beauty exists simply because it exists, and that reality offers proof that not everything in this world has been subordinated to the machinery of war. When I look at Dorothy beside her blue Chevrolet, I remember that somewhere, people still value things that serve no purpose except to make life more beautiful. Klaus's philosophical reflection on the photographs reveals both intellectual sophistication and deep emotional need for contact with values that transcended military utility. His recognition that beauty could exist without purpose beyond itself demonstrated preservation of aesthetic sensibility despite prolonged exposure to purely functional military thinking. The letter documents Klaus's attempts to understand the motivations of American women who risked official disapproval to provide photographs to enemy prisoners. His speculation about their reasons reveals both gratitude and puzzlement about kindness that seem to contradict rational wartime behavior. Why do they do this for us? He wonders. We are their enemies, soldiers who fought against their brothers and sweethearts, representatives of a nation that brought war to the world. Yet Maria risks her position to slip photographs between book pages, and Anna faces potential disciplinary action to drop images beside our meal trays. When I asked Maria directly about her motivations, she said simply, "Because you're boys who miss your mothers and sweethearts, and that's more important than what uniforms you wear." Hans. Such words from an enemy's mouth sound like wisdom from another planet. Klaus's puzzlement about American feminine compassion reveals both his gratitude and his difficulty understanding kindness that transcended national and military categories. The nurse's explanation that prisoners were boys who missed their mothers and sweethearts offered a perspective that prioritized human over political identity, suggesting American women's capacity to see individual humanity within enemy uniforms. The letter reveals the impact that photograph possession had on prisoner behavior and morale during particularly difficult periods of captivity. Klaus describes how access to these images affected prisoner response to disciplinary problems, homesickness, and uncertainty about the future. During the weeks when new photographs circulate through our informal network, camp discipline problems decrease dramatically, Klaus observes. Men who might otherwise fight over trivial matters, complain about food, or challenge guard authority become more cooperative and optimistic. The photographs don't eliminate our frustrations, but they provide emotional outlets that prevent desperation from turning into violence or despair. Sergeant Patterson has noticed this pattern, though he doesn't understand its cause. He probably attributes improved behavior to seasonal changes or mail delivery schedules. Klaus's observation about the correlation between photograph availability and prisoner behavior suggests that camp administrators might have benefited from contraband they officially prohibited. The improvement in discipline and morale created by forbidden photographs indicated that suppressing such materials might actually have undermined rather than enhanced camp management objectives. The letter documents specific conversations and debates that prisoners conducted about the women depicted in their hidden photograph collections. Klaus's accounts of these discussions reveal both the social bonding and individual emotional investment that developed around shared contraband materials. We have created detailed biographies for each woman based on clothing, background details, and facial expressions, Klaus writes. The girl in the wheat field becomes Dorothy from Kansas who teaches school and bakes apple pies for church socials. The woman beside the automobile becomes Helen from Detroit who works in a defense plant but dreams of opening a flower shop after the war. These stories aren't true, but they feel true when we tell them to each other. We need these women to have names, histories, hopes for the future. Anonymous beauty cannot sustain us. We require the illusion of personal connection. Klaus's description of biographical invention reveals both creative imagination and deep psychological need for authentic human relationships that captivity had denied. The prisoner's creation of fictional identities for photographed women demonstrated sophisticated emotional adaptation that allowed them to maintain capacity for love and attachment despite isolation from real relationships. The letter reveals Klaus's recognition that the photograph collection had become a form of collaborative art project that expressed collective prisoner creativity and emotional need. His analysis shows understanding of how contraband materials had evolved into cultural expression that transcended their original function. Our photograph collection has become more than entertainment or comfort, he reflects. It's a gallery of possibilities, a museum of the lives we might live if this war ever ends. We study these images like scholars examining ancient artifacts, searching for clues about how civilian people organize their existence around love rather than duty, beauty rather than function, hope rather than fear. These American women have unknowingly become our teachers, showing us through their unconscious grace how human beings behave when they're free to pursue happiness instead of victory. Klaus's sophisticated cultural analysis reveals both intellectual development and growing appreciation for democratic values that the photographs inadvertently transmitted. His recognition that the women served as teachers about civilian life suggested successful soft power projection through simple acts of feminine kindness that accomplished what formal re-education programs might not achieve. The letter documents Klaus's growing concern about what would happen to the photograph collections when the war ended and prisoners faced repatriation to Germany. His worries about maintaining these connections reveal both attachment to specific images and broader anxiety about losing contact with American values and possibilities. What will happen to Dorothy and Helen and Maria's sister when we return to Germany? He asks. Will we be allowed to keep these photographs as souvenirs of American kindness? Or will they be confiscated at the border as evidence of fraternization with the enemy? I cannot bear the thought of losing these faces that have sustained me through the darkest months of captivity. They represent more than beautiful women. They embody proof that human goodness persists even during wartime, that individual kindness can bridge the deepest political divisions. Klaus's concern about photograph preservation reveals both personal attachment and recognition of broader symbolic significance these images had acquired. His understanding that the photographs represented proof that human goodness persists elevated simple contraband materials to the level of historical testimony about possibilities for reconciliation and human connection across enemy lines. Subscribe so these forbidden stories don't vanish again. The letter concludes with Klaus's most profound reflection on how the hidden photographs had transformed his understanding of war, enemies, and the possibility for human connection that transcends national and military boundaries. His final observations capture both gratitude for unexpected kindness and recognition that these simple gestures had fundamentally altered his worldview. Hans, war teaches us to see enemies as abstractions, threats to be eliminated, obstacles to be overcome, problems to be solved through violence, he writes in his concluding paragraphs. But these photographs have shown me individual American women who choose kindness over suspicion, compassion over hatred, generosity over self-protection. When Maria slips a photograph between book pages, she risks her position to remind an enemy soldier that he remains human despite his uniform. When Anna drops an image beside my meal tray, she declares that human dignity transcends military necessity. These women wage their own war against war itself, using beauty as their weapon and love as their strategy. Klaus's philosophical conclusion reveals both intellectual sophistication and emotional transformation that resulted from exposure to systematic feminine kindness. His recognition that American women wage their own war against war itself demonstrated understanding of how individual acts of compassion could undermine the dehumanization necessary for sustained military conflict. The letter's final passage captures Klaus's attempt to preserve the memory of this experience while preparing for an uncertain future that might separate him forever from the American women who had shown him unexpected kindness during the darkest period of his life. If I survive this war and return to Germany, I will carry these images in my memory even if I cannot keep the actual photographs, he writes. Dorothy standing in her wheat field will remind me that somewhere, people still believe in harvest celebrations. Helen beside her automobile will prove that women can work in factories while remaining graceful and feminine. Maria's sister in her yellow dress will testify that beauty requires no justification beyond its own existence. These American women have given me more than photographs. They have restored my faith in human possibility. Klaus Zimmerman's letter was never sent during the war due to postal restrictions, but he preserved it among his personal effects and eventually shared it with his family after repatriation in 1946. His brother Hans kept the letter as evidence of American kindness that seemed impossible during the conflict's most bitter years. Klaus returned to Germany in early 1946 and settled in the American occupation zone, where he worked as a translator for military government offices. He married in 1949, a German woman who, according to family accounts, bore striking resemblance to Dorothy from his hidden photograph collection. He raised 3 children who became active supporters of transatlantic friendship and democratic institutions. The letter was donated to the German Federal Archives in 1993 along with other family papers documenting post-war reconstruction. Klaus's testimony has been incorporated into educational programs about civilian-military relations, gender roles during wartime, and the power of individual kindness to transcend national boundaries. Dr. Sarah Johnson, a historian who specializes in home front experiences during World War II, explains the significance of Klaus's account. His letter documents an informal network of American women who understood that humanizing enemy prisoners served both humanitarian and strategic purposes. Their compassionate actions helped transform German soldiers into potential allies while demonstrating democratic values more effectively than formal propaganda. The broader historical context reveals similar patterns of feminine kindness toward enemy prisoners throughout American history. Women have consistently served as agents of reconciliation and humanization during conflicts, often operating outside official channels to provide comfort and dignity to men separated from normal social relationships. Klaus's letter provides evidence that American women's spontaneous acts of kindness achieved significant strategic objectives without formal coordination or military supervision. Their intuitive understanding that lonely young men needed reminders of beauty and possibility demonstrated sophisticated psychological insight that complemented official re-education programs. The document challenges traditional narratives about prisoner treatment that focus primarily on military administration and security concerns, while overlooking the informal networks of civilian support that often proved equally important for prisoner morale and post-war attitudes. Klaus's testimony illustrates how simple acts of individual kindness can accumulate into powerful forces for reconciliation and attitude change. The photographs provided by American women accomplished cultural diplomacy objectives that formal programs might not have achieved through official channels. The letter has influenced contemporary understanding of how civilian populations can contribute to conflict resolution and post-war reconstruction through informal acts of compassion and cultural exchange. Klaus's experience demonstrates that peace-building often occurs through personal relationships rather than political agreements. Educational institutions have incorporated Klaus's letter into curricula dealing with gender studies, cultural diplomacy, and the role of civilian populations during wartime. His testimony provides concrete evidence of how individual actions can influence larger historical processes. The document serves as a reminder that official military histories often overlook the informal networks of kindness and cultural exchange that profoundly influence participant experiences and long-term outcomes of armed conflicts. Klaus Zimmerman's voice speaks across the decades, carrying testimony about unexpected beauty discovered in the midst of captivity, about feminine compassion that transcended national boundaries, about the power of simple photographs to preserve hope and humanity during warfare's darkest hours. His letter preserves evidence that human connection can persist even under conditions designed to eliminate personal relationships, that individual acts of kindness can undermine systematic dehumanization, and that women often serve as agents of reconciliation who understand intuitively what formal diplomacy struggles to achieve. The letter's enduring message transcends its specific historical context to illuminate universal questions about the power of beauty to maintain hope, the importance of feminine influence in moderating masculine violence, and the possibility of building peace through personal relationships that bridge political divisions. Klaus's final written words capture the profound transformation that simple photographs had accomplished. War made us into wolves, but these American women reminded us we could still be men. They gave us back our capacity to see beauty without possessing it, to love without conquering, to hope without certainty. In hiding their photographs, we preserved not just images but our own humanity. And perhaps that was their greatest gift. Not the beauty they shared, but the humanity they helped us remember. The forbidden photographs became more than contraband. They became proof that love could survive hatred, that beauty could transcend war, and that women's intuitive understanding of human need could heal wounds that military medicine could not touch. In the end, America conquered not just with superior firepower, but with yellow dresses and gentle smiles that reminded enemy soldiers they remained human beings capable of love, hope, and dreams of peace.